Welcome to 12 Hours in the Future with Maria Sanchir. Today, my guest is post production and audio engineer at Lehman College at City University of New York, whose credits include work with the Bacon brothers, John Bucchino and Felipe Quint. His television work includes Good Morning America, Pawn Stars, Dancing with the Stars, and Getting to Know the Bronx, which was nominated for Emmys. Steven Buonanotte, thank you so much for accepting my invitation and agreeing to talk to me today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
How are you today?
I'm very well. A little cold. It's an oddly cold today, but I'm doing very well.
Oh yes, it's so windy outside. We I wanted to talk very the first question I have is very maybe simple one. On the other hand, maybe very complicated one. I
Okay.
have heard a couple of different versions of this. Some say uh, the question is, what does the audio engineer do? And some say something like they record the sound, manipulate it, and then make sense of it. Others say that engineer's job is to connect everything and keep it moving. So here's my question for you with the twist.
Okay.
What does audio engineer do in film?
In film, okay. So I sort of, backing out a little bit, I consider recording audio and mixing audio two separate things. So there's a recording engineer and there's a mix engineer, um, and you know they don't always have to be the same person. They often are, but they don't have to be. As a recording engineer, especially in film, location recording or set recording is a whole different animal. I cut my teeth in music studios. I'm a musician, so I felt the film stuff for me came later. Uh, and it's in a studio when you're recording music, everything is controlled, and it's all about the sound. So the sound is king. So if the player has to play in a specific way or contort their body in a specific way or the mic has to move a certain way, everything stops and the sound is king. In a film, it's completely opposite. You have to just make do, and there's you're very rarely given the ideal environment to record. So more often than not, you're dealing with less than ideal situations. So it can be challenging, which I think is part of the fun of it. You're also dealing with potentially a far more dynamic program. So in a music studio, even if you're recording something loud like a drummer, that drummer, you sort of have an idea of where the top and where the bottom is. In a film, you don't often have that. An actor may get scream, they may get really soft, and the range is usually a lot more. So, and you're usually further away. So it becomes, there becomes a lot of challenges there. From the mix standpoint, I sort of put editing in there again, and there could be a separate editor as well. So the recording engineer, the editing engineer, and the mix engineer could be three different people. So post production in audio is, especially in film audio, is a lot of it's fixing, cleaning up sound, getting rid of noise, getting rid of all the unwanted stuff. There's a lot less tone shaping than there would be in music. In music, you could really, kind of dive in and manipulate stuff. I find that with film stuff, I don't do that as much. I'm sort of just taking the sizzle out of something, or, maybe scooping out some low end or sort of stuff like that. I'm not diving too deep into that. It's more level adjusting and fixing. And then the mix is getting everything right, obviously. So it's you're putting stuff in, and there's a lot of ways to do it. So it's not just putting your tracks in and getting levels up. Especially with dynamic program, automation, compression, all these other things, all these tools that we have to sort of balance everything out and make sure that it's that no one pays attention to the audio. So the if my job is done right, you don't notice anything. The music feels like it should be there. The dialogue feels like it should be there. The sound effects don't jump out or sound unnatural or unrealistic. That's the kind of the crux of things. It's you want to disappear. Whereas in music, I feel it's completely different. It's, you're serving the song, and there are no rules. If you make a vocal sound completely unlike a vocal, it's cool, and no one's going to be like, oh, that doesn't sound like a human. It's just part and parcel of what goes on there. So it's sort of two different mindsets, and I find them almost to be completely different, and fun in their own separate rights.
Right. Uh, so my next question is, what led you to Lehman College? What was your gig before, and why Lehman College?
That's a bit of a deeper question. Let's see, how do I respond to this? So, I I had a really weird point in my career where my career was it ebbed and flowed, but it was on a, if you backed out far enough, it was on a steady incline. Um, my work got better, bigger, cooler, and it was continuing to do so, up until a certain point where it literally just stopped. I mean, as if someone just shut a light switched off. All my work disappeared. I mean, I went from having one of the best quarters of my career to the worst quarter. I mean, by a large margin, and I got real nervous about that. I've had to weather ebbs and flows in my career, because sometimes you have a really good quarter, sometimes you don't, which is fine. But this was really bad, and I started to get really desperate. It was a weird point in time for me. I just met my wife, so here I am. I'm right now. My career's in the toilet, but I'm in love, and I'm professing my undying love to a woman, and we're going to get married. And it was this complete sort of rift of things, and I found I was answering ads for the most ridiculous jobs. I mean, anything that I was even remotely qualified for, I applied for. Air traffic controller. It had something to do with computers, so I thought I could probably do it. I mean, I was really desperate, and I answered an ad for networking problems, but it was for a Macintosh, so I know Macs. I figured, all right, I can do this. There was a little line on the bottom of the ad that said knowledge of Digital Performer Plus, and every meter in me just started going off. The flags, the bells, everything was started going off, because Digital Performer is audio software, and I know that software like the back of my hand. So I was like, all right, I want this. I did it, and it turned out to be Michael Bacon, who became one of my best clients and really saved me at that time. And he came to Lehman College, and he called me up one day out of the blue and said, "Hey, I'm a distinguished lecturer at this college. I want you to go check it out. Make sure the classroom tech is in line with what I do." And I said, "Yeah, sure, of course." And then that sort of led to, "Hey, can you do the class with me? They'll put you on staff." And I'm like, all right, and I have avoided academia my entire career, like the plague, actually, because I didn't think I'd like it. And once I was in it, I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. I could, I dig this. And as things progressed, I started to get to know everyone there, and I started to really believe in the college. I really believed that we had this gem of a space in this gem of a college, and I really felt like I could do something there. I was needed, and I wasn't just another person, which was exciting. And then I started to teach my own classes, both at Lehman, I also at the new school, and I found that perfect class. It doesn't happen often, but that perfect class of the curriculum goes out the window, where there's conversation, and everyone's responding, and it's like the perfect gig. The sound is good, the audience is responding. It's that magic where every time you walk on stage, you hope, is tonight going to be that night? Every class I walk in, I'm like, all right, is this going to be that class? And it's become this fuel for me, where I feel like, okay, this is what I want to do now. I'm pivot or perish. I'm shifting my eggs to this basket, and I dig it, and this it's where I want to be now.
To listen to my interview with Michael Bacon, go to my other channels. There are two whole episodes of my interview with Michael.
Right, right. Well, yeah, completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, Michael has been such an amazing force in my life. I mean, I value his friendship above all else, but he's a mentor. I have gotten to work with so many people from him, and I've gotten so many opportunities just from being attached to him in some small way. It's really it's immeasurable. I can't quantify it enough.
Yeah, I can certainly feel the love in the air in the Lehman College. Like I said the other time, it's very big, happy, loving family here. Yeah, it's so lovely.
Yeah, yeah.
It actually really perfectly tracks into my next question about the school. So when I think you probably know that every time we would get an interest into in a school, like thinking to go back or choosing the first school and stuff, there's a lot of videos, articles, like blogs and vlogs and everything on internet that's saying, does it worth it? Does school worth it? For example, when I was looking for a film program, there was a lot of like, don't go to school for filmmaking, just
Right,
become a
right, right.
filmmaker, as if it's just so easy. So I wanted to ask, did your audio school actually worth it? Was it worth it? And tell us about
Ooh,
your
that's a
journey
we,
in
yeah,
Berkeley.
that's a I wonder if we could put like a bleep on my words here.
I
The
definitely
well, I'll say this.
go ahead, but we're not censored or anything like that. So
Well,
we
okay,
can.
yeah, no, I'll try to answer this as best I can. My experience with school aside, and I'll get to that in half a second. Being a teacher, it's really started to connect some dots that I didn't really have connected before. Is that school? I used to think school was about what you were taught, and it couldn't be further from the truth. School is what you make of it, right? You can go to your class, do your work, and go home and not get anything out of it. It's you have to. School is about as much as what you put into it is about as much as the school gives you, and that means different things for different people. So is college worth it? I think the answer is going to be: are you ready as a student? And how do you want to learn? And how do you need to learn? So, for example, I could very easily say that I could have gotten the same education if I would have went and got it myself. But would I have gotten it myself? I don't know. I don't know that I would have been. I don't know that I would have done the right things. My undergraduate, I left Berkeley the first time incredibly disappointed. I felt that and I blamed it on the school. I felt that the school had failed me. I felt like every semester I kept saying, okay, this sucks, but it's going to get better. Next semester is where we're going to get to the good stuff. And I remember my last semester going, I can't say that anymore. This is it. I'm done after this. And we never got to the good stuff. I went to Berkeley specifically because I thought I could sidestep the academia BS. That I wasn't going to sit in history classes and just learn stuff that I didn't want to know. I don't care. I wanted to learn how to do my job. I wanted to touch a console. I wanted to compose. I wanted to do the things that I wanted to do. I didn't want to have to do the mindless BS stuff, which, no disrespect to that, it is definitely needed. But I wanted the ratio to be small on that and heavy on the stuff that I really felt like I wanted to get into. And I felt that when I left my undergraduate, I didn't get that. So I was really angry with it for a long time. But looking back on it, I made connections there that have stayed with me through my career that I wouldn't have had. That I don't think my career would have been anywhere near what it was if without those connections. I did learn a lot, as much as it took me a while to admit that to myself. I did learn a lot. So it's that sort of thing. And, going back to grad school after not being a student for a while and being a teacher myself, that opened up everything. I have a completely different perspective. After finishing grad school, I went in there wanting more as a student, and I took more as a student, far more than I did when I was a kid when I did my undergraduate. All I cared about was what bar I was going to that night, or where the party was. I didn't care about school at all. I was living away from my family for the first time. I was free. It was a whole different experience. As an adult, where the money had a lot more to do with it, and the seriousness of what I was doing had a lot more to do with it. I really, I dug more into it, and I got a lot out of it. You actually asked me previously if grad school is hard. It's not. It wasn't for me, but I sought more through. I asked more questions. I took a topic that ended in class, and I tried to figure it out further. So I was seeking more of it. The pandemic helped, because I had a little bit more time. But I forced myself to go further and deeper into these because I wanted to, and I was excited, and I got more out of it. So I think the best answer to that question is, it's not, is the school worth it? Is, are you ready as a student? And what do you need to learn? Because internships to me were invaluable. I did an internship when I was at Berkeley for my undergraduate. I think it was like a couple of months. I learned more in that couple of months on that I use on a day-to-day basis than 6 years and 2 bachelors at Berkeley, for sure. Not to say that one was worth it more than the other, but that internship completely rocked my world. I did another internship my last year at Berkeley. I learned so much. I made connections. So, yeah, that's great too. So I don't know if I would trade one for the other, but I'm glad I had both. So I don't. Will you get an education through YouTube? I mean, I guess if you're savvy and you're hungry enough. I know that I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't have the stamina, or the stamina is the wrong word. The willpower to keep going at a certain point, right? There's a certain point where you're stuck, and you need someone to go, no, that one, and then all of a sudden, like, oh, okay, I get it. You don't get that with YouTube. There's no interaction, or a master class or something like that. I went down the master class hole, bunny hole, during the beginning of the pandemic, where I think someone from Lehman kind of guided me to the New York Public Library, and I guess because we work in the city, we get access to LinkedIn.com, which is all these master classes, and I there was like a 24-hour period where, like, I don't think I slept. I just started watching these, and then I like a drug. I'm like, okay, I gotta back off on this. I have a family. I have to leave my computer at some point. But will you get the proper education there? I mean, yeah, if that's how you want to learn, if that's what you need to learn, then yeah. But if you need structure, if you need interaction, then school is the best way. If you learn by example, then maybe an internship is the best way. I mean, I don't think it's a one or the other. I think it's the combination. For me, it was the combination, for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, because there's a lot of, especially in the film, there's a lot of this kind of information out there. Like, you don't need to go to school to become a filmmaker. Very debatable, I think. But
Well, I mean,
yeah,
also in the music world too. I mean, how many famous musicians out there never studied music at all?
yeah,
So do you need it? No. Does it help? Probably not. I mean, it's not. But you know what I mean. Like, does the education help in that make you famous? No, it doesn't. It's do that depends on you. Will it make you a better musician? Yeah. I mean, will it help you get other jobs other than fame, like studio musician or whatever? Yeah, of course. The ability to read and to talk music with other musicians certainly helps, but it doesn't. It just means your job is a lot harder if you don't have that.
yeah, for sure. So I've listened to this podcast episode where this audio engineer person sitting there, and he's giving away reasons for people not to become one. So I thought we could.
Well, I could add to that one for sure. The music industry is going through a change. It's been going through a change. Some would say it's a downward spiral. I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I think musicians in general are creatures of habit. And even the most flexible ones have to be habitual in order to exist in their craft. I mean, what do we do when we learn an instrument? We sit and we do things over and over and over and over again. You have to be habitual. And we're at a point of serious change, and we've been at a point for serious change, and it's the Wild West in a lot of ways. There's no norms. So as an audio engineer, there used to be a point in time where you would intern at a studio, you would get to be an assistant engineer, and then at some point you would be appointed a lead engineer in the studio, and you could make your living that way, and it was the way to go. But big studios are dropping like flies because of people like me who have awesome studios in their houses, and there are more and more people who are calling themselves audio engineers. Maybe they're legit, maybe they're not, but there used to be a handful of people who were capable. Now there's dozens. You could throw a rock and hit 20 of them. So yes, the industry is not what it was, but also you don't need $2 million worth of gear to make a viable sounding radio ready album, or content. I mean, you don't need, you can have a MacBook Pro and a good set of headphones and a decent interface and a microphone, and you're already at what used to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars 10, 15 years ago, so, or 20 years ago, whatever. So it's like trying to be an artist, right? So when I was a kid and I had the dreams of being a rock star, how do you do that? Well, you need to get assigned to a record label because they have to fund, the couple of $100,000 to make an album. Then it's got to be printed, and they have to have relationships with stores, distribution, advertising. All of that stuff now can be done on the internet. You can make an album with a MacBook Pro. You don't need a $500,000 Neve console anymore. It's great if you have it, but you don't need it. You don't need a record label anymore. What is a record label going to do for you? You could do your own advertising. You have to be really good, and it's really hard. It's not like that, but you don't need distribution. There's no physical stuff anymore. You don't need CDs or tapes or whatever. You could just post the stuff on the internet and you're good to go. The landscape has completely changed, and it's pivot or perish. So if you're savvy enough to try to figure out how to find a niche for yourself, then you're going to do great. If you want to just get hired in a place and go to work and then go home and forget about life, it's probably not a good career choice.
So, this is like for people like you and also like Professor Bacon. It is you have to work on things that are not necessarily maybe your favorite things. In other words, you sort of like lack an autonomy and choice in the music that you're working on, right? Because well, mostly uh, when you face this kind of challenge, uh, how do you handle that? And because I don't think it's easy, because you have to
No.
sit on it like for hours and hours on end.
Yeah, committing to a project, you have to know that you're going to be listening to that project for you know months potentially. I heard Michael explain this once in a way that made a lot of sense to me, because I didn't realize that I was doing the same thing. And you find something on a project to love. So I've worked on plenty of projects that I didn't, but you find that one thing or that part in it that you could connect with, and you hold on to that. I could say out of all the projects I've done, I could probably count on one hand the amount of projects that I just couldn't find anything, that had nothing redeeming for me. And I did them, and I walked away from them, and I'm done with them. So usually I find something that I like. And it's usually not that hard for me to do that. So rarely even is it just the one little thing. Usually I could find some larger meaning in all of it and like it and enjoy it. I mean, I worked on advertising for many years. So hearing a French's mustard jingle over and over and over again. I was an assistant engineer at a jingle house when we were doing the first run of commercials for Olive Garden. So listening to the Tarantella for a week. I mean, it's you can't do that if you can't find something to love. You'll go crazy. I write music for soap operas. It's not always fun, but I find fun within it, and I find a love within it, and I latch onto that, and that's how I could pour my heart and soul into a job. And also, to me, there's something magical about the end, right? So if I'm in a project and it's difficult or unenjoyable or something like that, the knowledge of at some point I'm going to stand back from this and look at it and be like, that was me, gets me through that, because I want to get to that point. It's like working out. You get to a point where you're working out where you're like, oh, I can't do this anymore. But when you're done, there's that gratification of like, okay, I did this. I rode, that many miles on my bike, or I walked this many, whatever. So you have that gratification at the end. And a lot of times that gets me through in and of itself. Forget about the project,
This concludes the first part of my conversation with Steve Buonanotte. The second part will follow.
12 Hours in the Future is produced by Jim Carney and Maria Sanchir, with technical help from Curtis Antwi. Special thanks to Professor Tom O'Hanlon, Dean James Mann, and Magda Soto. The executive producer and host of 12 Hours in the Future is Maria Sanchir. 12 Hours in the Future with Maria Sanchir is a series of conversations recorded by the Bronx Journal Radio through the resources of Lehman College, City University of New York. You can find us everywhere podcasts are available and on YouTube. This show is protected under international copyright and may not be recorded or retransmitted without written consent. Until next time, when we see you 12 hours in the future.